So as we get into game one, of the first things that I notice is that everyone's trying to go for the swords and a lot of the offensive items, like a bow or the ability power. I personally was able to snag this crit glove because I find most of the meta needs one solid carry to get things going. As for who that carry is, I think we can play pretty flexibly and hold on for a bit before we have to decide. Getting this Udyr nice and early means that we can have Draconic as an option for what we may end up going in our final comp, or at the very least to get us through the mid-game. But then we see 4 Callistas in the shop and suddenly everything changes. So the first thing you want to make sure to do is that you get that Callista 2-star because, as I've said, and as I will repeat, the most important thing you can have in the early game is a 2-star unit. Beyond that, I would say it'd be really important to have a 3-cost unit, followed by synergies, followed by maybe a 2-cost and a 1-cost, depending on what you're able to find. So what I'm thinking to myself as this early game rolls through is, okay, I've managed to hit a 2-star Callista very early. I've managed to hit a Legionaire in Aatrox for frontline, along with Leona and a Poppy on bench to have 2 knights going into level 4. So right now my gut's saying if I'm able to get another item, maybe I can make this work with an early push for a higher level. And lo and behold, I'm left with 3 units, one of which is a redeemed. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go for a fast level here. Going for that fast level means that I can have a little bit more options, a little bit more leeway, but I'm not looking to go for a 3-star Callista or a 1-cost. So I want to make sure with that win that I buy this Udyr, because if I do end up finding Draconic units, it's early enough in the game that I can almost force them. And seeing that I'm able to hit the sword really opens up my damage potential, as well as the fact that I hit the Draconic and the double brand. So this makes me feel that I don't need this Ka, because I can throw an Infinity Edge on Callista so that she can start putting out a lot of damage for a early game carry. I also still have the Udyrs that I can use to run a build maybe with Skirmishers, maybe with Draconic, but currently I'm more leaning towards some sort of an Abomination early game, maybe with a Spellweaver to go with Brand, or to stay with the Redeemed that I currently have, because I feel that Redeemed can be a very powerful composition if you get an AP unit that wants to carry from the backline as more of a solo carry. Think something similar to a Vel'Koz. With the wind, I get the extra gold. I buy the brand, and I don't think I'm going to go Draconic here. It's a little bit too slow. So I sell the Poppy, and I end up selling the Victor to make sure... Sorry, that wasn't Victor. But I end up selling the Poppy and the other unit so I get enough money to buy this Nidalee so that I can have the 3 Skirmishers on my bench in the event that I want to go Skirmishers. Now, going for the early Infinity Edge here really does limit my options slightly, in that if I do end up going for Skirmishers, I'm not going to be able to get a lot of good items for someone like Jax, who'd be a carry. But what I could actually do with this early Callista as well as the Aatrox and the Redeemed is I could look to go something like Legionaires, where 6 Legionnaires has been popping up recently as a very powerful build, being able to include units as Mordekaiser for a frontline carry, and the backline carries of Kale and Drayden. The splash units for this comp, and when I say splash units, I mean units that you would want to add once you have your main composition bonuses to fill in the comp, would be something like another redeemed unit, ideally a Rel, possibly Dragon Slayer, potentially, just depending on what you find your composition needs. I would say that one of the best things you could add would be a Mystic. I don't think I'm going to be going the Skirmisher build here, so one of the first things I want to do is I want to clean up my bench a little bit, start making a little bit of Econ Gold, and continue my way on going through the game. When I say Econ Gold, I'll explain what that means after we go through the carousel. So the first thing I notice immediately is that there's a Spat. When there's a Spat on the field, you want to make sure that you keep your options open, and one of the builds that I love going with a Spat, if I'm able to get it, would be Abomination. Now, it's not looking very likely, and there it goes, but you definitely don't want to close off any doors to yourself before the game's even really started. So, I go for the Varus here to grab myself an extra redeemed unit, grab myself a defensive item for my frontline tanks, and leave my options as open as I can as I move into the mid stages of the game as we go into round 3 to the middle of round 3. Around 3-3-3-5. For now, I think the strongest play is to level up, because that will let me keep the 3 redeemed while also adding in Brand, another 2-star unit that I have in my roster here. I feel a little bit weak still, knowing that I only have 1-stars on my front line, but thankfully Syndra does a little bit of anti-assassin insurance. Going into this match, I noticed that this person looks like they're also going to be going Legionnaires, so it may be a contested build throughout the game, but I'm sitting in a much stronger position for now, having the 2-star Callista and the 2-star Brand. I don't think as the game progresses that I will remain strong, though, because they have many of the 3 costs, namely Riven and Yasuo, that I would aim to be going for later on in the game. So, if I manage to hit another defensive item, let's say another belt that I could throw onto Mordekaiser to make Warmogs, one of his ideal items, then I would continue on with the build. Apologies for any difference in audio that you hear as I go through these first couple games. I'm still trying to get everything all set up, and unfortunately there are going to be a few audio, let's say, glitches along the way. So I sell the Varuses to get to 20 gold while also being able to free up the item off of Varus. And as I move into Krugs, I want to make sure my units are in a position that are a bit more defensible so I don't lose to the Krug damage. So the first things on my mind as I start to get my items are, alright, what am I going to be able to do with these items that I get? And I get a Spatula. So Spatula would enable many different things. If I'm able to hit magic resistance, I could still go for a redeemed build. But one of the first things that comes to my mind is, alright, I may be able to get myself an Abomination build if I can find a Nunu soon. Because Abominations are a very strong build that a lot of people have disregarded lately, considering the nerf to the Zizurot and the Shadow Zizurot that they don't apply onto the Abomination. In order to get an Abomination spat, I would need a Shadow Crit Glove, which is a little bit hard to grab. The only options I'll have are carousels on round 3-4, as well as getting lucky on round 4-2 with my Shadow items, so I can't bank on that as play. Basing it off the items that I have now, though, an Ironclad emblem is good enough because most builds, you want to add Ironclad as a defensive option. Now, for some reason, it's like every build that I try to mention ends up being heavily contested, so it looks like there are 2 or 3 people going Legionnaires in this game. And that's okay. Because there are a couple of Legionnaires throughout the game, I may alter my game plan slightly. I may go a little bit harder into rolling for Callistas or looking for Brands to be able to make a bit more of a damage composition with an Abomination. And when I'm thinking that, I want to start thinking towards items for a magic damage carry. So I want to grab this Needlessly Large Rod, because at best, it's going to become a Jeweled Gauntlet, which is good on Mordekaiser, or Vel'Koz, or even anything like Karma, any sort of an ability power carry. At worst, it's going to be an item that just sits on brand, maybe powers up my Abomination a little bit. But I'm really hurting right now for lack of a 2-star frontline. And I really need to start seeing about finding 1 more Leona and 1 more Aatrox to try to make myself a lot more comfortable. If I am going to continue down the Abomination path, the first thing that comes to mind is that I need to try to find 1, Nunu, and 2, I need to find a good Abomination item to throw on to someone like Nunu. Because the Abomination is going to get items from all my different units, and I want to make sure that I can properly address them. So I hit Diana and Nocturne here. Considering my board state and the fact that I can make a Guardian Angel with Infinity Edge fairly easily, I may end up jumping over to Assassins. So I want to make sure to pick both of those up. But before I go, I still feel a bit too weak with my current board, so I want to do a little bit of rolling. Doing 2 rolls statistically there seemed like the right choice with the highest chance at level 5 to be able to hit my units. And that put me with an extra Callista, a 2-star Leona, and a 2-star Aatrox. A much stronger frontline than previous. I also throw the health on Leona because I want her to survive for as long as possible. And also, if I can, I want to make sure to get a win on this round. Because if I extend my loss streak further, that's fine. But if I only lose by 1 or 2 units, as I believe I did there, it puts me in a much more powerful position moving forward. So as we go into Carousel, I look for something like a Shadow Crit Glove, I look for a blue buff, and there's a Shadow blue buff. So I think to myself, okay, Shadow blue buff on the Callista, I can make that work if I'm able to pick it up. I don't think I'll be able to. Oh. Yep, I'll be able to. So all I need now is a tier, and I would actually have perfect items for a LeBlanc carry. Now, in this patch, they're looking to do a hotfix patch, I believe, tomorrow. I'm just looking that up. I'm not sure if it's already gone through for tonight or if it'll be for tomorrow. But they're looking to nerf the way that LeBlanc interacts with Shadow Blue buff, so it's not as overpowered and overpowering for the players. And if I do end up with a Shadow tier on Callista, it's not the end of the world. It's not an awful item on her. And I could find a use for it with the Hand of Vengeance if I don't end up going for the ability power carries. Or sorry, the assassin carries. So it looks like the balance patch is going to be coming out tomorrow. And this LeBlanc has a Shadow Blue buff and Infinity Edge. So there will be a little bit of contesting, but the fact that I already have the higher cost assassins ready to go does put me in a fairly strong position. The only problem is I don't have the Coven units to support it, so I'm not sure if the Shadow Blue buff is the best play for LeBlanc. If I want to continue on the redeemed path, which I think I might for now, finding the 2% Taric before a level up here is very powerful, as he is a very strong, even mid to late game unit, for the fact that he provides armor as well as a heal in the area around him. So, unfortunately, I still haven't been able to find a single Nunu to drastically increase the power of my comp by getting an Abomination. And the fact that this person has, I believe they had two Hellions holding redeemed spats in Cannon and Ziggs, it's very likely that they'll do a hard pivot in the late game. Now, I hit the 3-star Callista here, but more importantly, I hit a LeBlanc. So what I actually do is I sell the Callista to get the blue buff off, so it keeps my options open if I do end up going for Assassins. And then I'm able to buy the rest of these champions to have 3 Assassins sitting on the bench. So that just happened. I just got 3 spatulas and found another assassin in the shop. So I think it's time to do a full pivot. Now what do I mean by a full pivot? I mean I take out all of the units that I have in currently, or most of the units that I have in currently, and swap them out for what I consider to be a much stronger board state. And in this stronger board state, I believe I want to itemize LeBlanc as the carry here. And to keep my options open, I want to make sure that I don't make this Shadow tier into anything yet. But with all the extra gold that I've accrued, I can definitely make use of that in trying to roll down aggressively. And I'm going to have to. So what I'm going to have to do here is look to go to level 7 next round. And on level 7, I need to make sure that I find... It's a little bit too late for Coven, so I probably want to start finding some Revenant. Now, I didn't hit another tier here, which is very unfortunate for the build that I'm trying to go. But in order to make this build work and salvage some of the damage, I think the strongest play is going to be going for a BF sword here. The reason why I wanted to grab... Oh, well, that would have been the Abomination that I was talking about earlier. Shame. So, we give Diana the Crown of Shame here. And for now, we buy what we can from the shop to make ourselves a little bit more powerful with 2 Cavalier. But we do hit the Revenant in Ivern, who's going to make us a lot stronger when we get our Nocturne. What we are going to need to do is do a little bit of rolling and try to figure out what we can do to salvage this game, because I don't think going with the Assassins is the right play. Unfortunately, I sold my units too early, and as you can see, I should have waited till after 4-2 to make sure that I could get myself whatever I would need. But thankfully I kept this Syndra, so I can still be able to have some sort of a front line with Knights, back line with Legionnaires. And this loss wasn't as bad as it could have been, so it definitely makes me feel a lot more comfortable moving into the next round. So at this point, I'm a little bit stuck, and I'm kind of floundering for ideas, because the Legionnaire option that I had in the beginning, I lost because on 4-1, instead of waiting for my item that I would have gotten on 4-2, I sold both of my carries in an Aatrox option for frontline tank and a Callista option for a backline tank. So I'm pretty sure that this game will just end up being a fast 8th place. And hopefully I'll be able to perform better in the next game. Going into this carousel, I have the first pick. And one of the first things I need is some form of a late game assurance. So if I can, I'm going to aim to grab this Kale here, because I can make use of the fact that I have a blue buff on Kale to potentially make some form of a save play with the redemption on another unit. And the fact that Kale will give me both Verdant and Redeemed will be really powerful. Along with the Legionaire, actually. I can use all 3 of these perks as I look to go into this round. Potentially one of my last. So, in order to salvage this, what I want to end up doing here is ensure that I have the Redeemed, ensure that I have the Legionnaire. What I'll also do here is make sure that Kale's in the corner and that Leona can tank as much damage as possible while still being able to provide for the team. Hopefully having Tarek next to her will buy me enough time to get a bit more recovery out. When I go to level 8, what I would look to do would be to add another knight, because ideally I want to take this Diana and I want to change it out for Nautilus, because I want to make sure that when I have the option to go Redeemed, that I can have a suitable front line. So I have about 1 loss left in me before I'm out, so I'm going to have to do a little bit less talking next round, a little bit more proactivity. So what I ended up trying to do as a way to salvage this right now is I made sure that... Okay, I'll take the free win to buy myself some time, absolutely. What I wanted to do here was I'm trying to play off the best units that I can at the moment. And so I want to throw in the Kindred, because even though Kindred doesn't fit well in my comp in the fact that she's a Mystic and a Ranger, neither of which I'm currently running, she is a 5 cost that can provide useful utility and damage. But as I look to find other units to put in, the most important thing I want to try to hit is the 6 Redeemed. And yes, I know I've sold multiple Varus over the course of the game, but having that time bought for me by having that other person leave the game has really opened up the door for me to get another chance at finding a Draven 2, finding something or some sort of items for Kale, and finding a way that I can get another redeemed unit or 2. So first and foremost, I'd be looking for Lux. So before I start going crazy with rolling, the other option of what I'm thinking here is I may end up just taking this Ashe. And the reason for that is I can run her as another Ranger. And having Ashe in as this other Ranger will not only be able to protect my Kindred and Kale, but can also help with keeping everybody CC immune. The update, if any, that I would make to the team is I would take out Leona for a stronger Knight, since I don't need her for redeemed and my knight synergy already has 2 units, what I would do ideally is look for a Garen. And what I would do is I would put my tank healing items onto Tarek as a primary frontline unit. So at this point, I don't feel that Legionnaire is doing nearly enough, and I can put the items on Kale to make her into a more survivable threat as the game goes on. And what I'll end up doing here is, since I'm not finding another unit to make into a frontline like a Garen, and my time is pretty much out here, what I was aiming to do was see if I could get a redeemed 6 by swapping out the Ashe for Varus. So no matter how much I'd love to have Garen, Darius is still a fine option to add as another knight into the composition. Unfortunately, my my Vel'Koz doesn't have any items on him, so he's not going to be any type of a damage threat here for a little while. Thankfully, he is 2-star, so it does mean that he will tickle, but he's not going to be the reason why I would win a fight. So that Mordekaiser has a Gunblade, which means I lose this. Oh, well. Thankfully, Kills and Vulnerability bought me enough time. So above and beyond for everything else, I need survivability, and finding a lucky Garen here provides me just that. Yeah, nerf Mord, right? They're actually looking to nerf him in a hotfix patch tomorrow. They're going to be dropping his spell damage from 500, 650 to 450, 600 at the levels 1 and 2. So what I'm trying to do with this layout is to bring my units a little bit closer towards my carry so that they can be a little bit more protected while still allowing Vel'Koz to do what he does best and sit alone and maybe get some kills with lasers. So here we have another person going Legionnaires, but the problem that I'm going to have with this composition is that they have an Aphelios with the Legionnaire Spat and Shadow Guardian Angel. So if I'm not able to consistently crowd control their composition, which thankfully I have both Syndra and Ivern to be able to provide a lot of extra crowd control, then I would definitely not be able to hold out there. So we hit the Rel here, and I think the actual best play that I can do is to sell the Garen, because I want to put this Locket onto Tarek, because Locket scales its shield with level, and making sure that I can have a slightly bigger shield, even if it's only 50 health, is still 200 across the 4 units. So Vel'Koz is definitely going to get destroyed here first, and unfortunately, because it is an assassin player, I don't think I'll be able to hold out against them. So unfortunately it's going to be a loss, but thankfully we were able to work it back from 8th place to 5th with a little bit of smart decision making and not being afraid to sell some powerful units and flex them into different positions. I think it's time to go again. You know, I'm going to have to start learning how to use polls, because I want to make sure that in the future I can let you guys have another say on, you know, what little legend I can use going into a match, what booms you think I should use, the arena skins, depending on what I own, which of course I'd be showing in the future. I think for now, just to keep things consistent, I want to be using the same little legend in arena and boom, but I definitely want to make sure that my viewers get the most out of their experience. So now that I have a bit of a lull, how's the night going for everybody? Hopefully well. Atlantic Chonk. I believe I do own a 3-star Atlantean Chonk. So after this, I will make a point to put it on for you, AlphaGen. Thanks for the suggestion. Alright, so going into this game, new round, new lobby, new carousel. It's looking like an offensive carousel with the option for multiple bows, swords, and ability power rods, which is great for me because, as I say, you only really need to get one carry itemized. The other ones can be good for support, but most of the meta right now is leaning towards something like a LeBlanc carry in Assassins, or a Mordekaiser carry in Legionnaires, or a Jax carry in Skirmishers, a Felios in Nightbringers. You get the idea. So in these early stages of the game, I like to take a second and just think about what I could do based off of the starts that we've been given. So I've got a similar start to last game in that I have a fast Infinity Edge that I can build. And also I'm really hoping that there's a money drop out of these camps and not just another item, because that would let me get Gragas plus Kha'Zix, and that is one of the stronger early game builds, because you get the 2 Dawnbringer, and with that Gragas becomes a very, very solid frontline. So I didn't get it, and that's okay. The main reason why I didn't want to jump on that right away was it was possible that I could have gotten a 2-star Aatrox. I find a lot that in these games, what usually happens is they will give you a couple of units in the shop, and it's very likely that will end up happening that you'll have a 2-star unit going into stage 2-1. I think that's one of the best ways that you can have early game to preserve some health. So there should be another drop of a couple gold here, and what I'm actually going to do is sell those veins and buy the set. Now the reason why I want to buy the set is because I already have an Udyr, as well as already having a Gragas for 2 Brawler. But I want to make sure one of the first things I do is get this sword off of Gragas, because no matter what I end up going, you do not want to have a spare sword lying on the Gragas. Armor, that can work for sure. A crit glove even, no problem. Any defensive item, very useful. But when you start leaving items like swords on tanks that you can potentially use into the late game, you want to make sure that you don't have them with items, even if it means not being able to 2-star that unit right away, unless you know that your final composition is not going to include that unit. So what I may look to do here, because I'm going to be winning the first round for sure, is I'm going to actually look to pre-level. It shouldn't ruin my econ very much, but what it will let me do is I have a better chance of finding something like a Zyra or an Ashe. And why that's really powerful is if you get an early Draconic, it really sets you up for a fast level 9 game and a potentially 3-star of many units. And keeping that in mind, I want to make sure that I have a damage option for as the composition evolves. but I do need to put in something to support my team. Now, what I'll do is I'll buy the third Brawler, keep it on the bench, because the Brawler's a 2-4 trait, you don't need the third one in. But what's actually interesting is I'm going to swap Set out for Warwick, because when you leave them both off the bench, they actually have the same amount of health, but Set deals a lot less damage with his skill. So I'm going to try this round with Warwick in, to see if I can end up making a difference over the Set in terms of durability or crowd control. Now, looking at my items here, I noticed that I have a couple of different options. I can definitely make something like an Infinity Edge or a spell crit in a Jeweled Gauntlet, as well as I can make a Guardian Angel if I go for the spell crit. So I'm thinking to myself, this could be a Dawnbringer game, considering I've already gotten an early Dawnbringer in the Nidalee. And Karma loves to get a Jeweled Gauntlet. The only concern that I'd have at this point is how I'd be able to get there. Now, I'm going to buy all of these Spellweavers in the shop. And I'm going to... I know Leona's a powerful unit, but what I'm going to do is set myself up so that if I win the round, I can buy the Victor. If I lose the round, I will sell an Udyr and buy the Victor. And the reason for that is because 4 Spellweavers and getting them very early in the game is enough to make a comp in its own. Along with the 4 Spellweavers, all you'd really need is frontline. And the frontline that you can actually do along with these Spellweavers is something like a Draconic in the early game, which will get you through the late game as long as you find Zyra as your Spellweaver. So ideally, what I would look to do here is go for a faster level 6, knowing that I could potentially have 3 Draconic. Now, I'm not low enough on the carousel, but if I could grab that Ash with the Crit Glove, I definitely would. I'm confident that it'll be gone, because Crit Glove's a pretty hot commodity in the early to mid game, but we'll see. You know what? Pleasant surprises happen every day. So we're going to take this Ash, we're going to go into a 3 Draconic build and start building up those eggs. Thankfully, we got it on 2-4, so it's not too late to be able to start going on this path. So the 3 units we want to swap out, absolutely, are the units that are not part of this Draconic trait and not part of these Spellweavers. Because when I'm looking at this comp potentially for late game, Draconic will come out after I've gotten some eggs and gotten some value from it, but I want to make sure that I can put in Zyra, I can put in the Spellweavers, and then I can sit and generate gold at level 6 for a while. In order to get started on that plan, I will probably take a couple of hard losses with the units that I have in, but I want to maximize on that by starting to get my economy up more. And the best I can say is we're in for a rough ride. So I definitely want to level here to make this transition a little bit easier. And I think Brand could be the ideal unit to throw in, seeing as he's closest enough to a 2-star, and he'll provide a magic damage shred that will also deal a pretty solid burn over time on enemies. If I wanted to completely sack the rounds, what I would do is I would swap Victor in, knowing that I'm going to be losing these rounds, definitely, but giving me the option to potentially sell these units to get to 20 gold if I miraculously find a win, which I am extremely doubtful for. Especially versus Hellions, where I don't have anything like a Vel'Koz or a Zyra yet to be able to provide a large amount of area of effect damage. So going into the round with Krugs, I definitely want to make sure I stack my units on the right-hand side. And I do that because if I do not stack these units correctly and they're all 1 star, you can actually lose to the Krugs, which has the potential of you not getting items, not getting some gold, and will really have a snowball effect. Alright. So, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to look for a faster level. And the main reason why I want to make sure that I get this level in is because I'm looking extremely weak on my board. And in order to try to fix that, I need to find pairs. I need to find something. So I look for something like the Zyra, since I already have a spare Ash. Unfortunately, I don't have a tier, and I want to make sure to start using these items as soon as I can. Unfortunately, I don't have a tier or a 2-star Udyr set. So what I'm going to have to do after this round on 3-2, once I find an item component that I like, I'm going to have to start slamming items. So I want to make sure that I don't lose out on any of my items. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make a double armor on my Udyr. And I'm going to grab the magic resistance. Now this is a bit of a lucky hit moment in that I'm able to 2-star many different units, but I still think that I'm not quite strong enough because I don't have Force Spellweaver in as a trait. Now, when I look at my composition, I notice that what I really need is some form of survivability while my units can get their casts off. So what I look to do is I just look to set up my frontline units as big of a tanks as possible. Because Spellweaver as a trait gives you ability power whenever any champion uses an ability. Thankfully, Brand's got a 20 mana cost, but just from that, I was able to bring up Zyra's ability power by the maximum 40%. So I use the Draconic trait and the eggs that I'm getting to make up for some of my lost gold in rolling to find these units to try to power spike a little bit harder. I don't look for a set because I definitely hope to get a set out of an egg at some point. But I do want to make sure I keep Draconic in, or else I'm going to lose out on generating more eggs and more value. What I may end up doing, if I lose this round, I'll look to sell Ash, because I'll be able to find her later as she's a 3 cost, so her chances are only going up. As well, I don't want to lose out on Ziggs. So I think win or lose here, the right play is to sell the Ash and prepare myself for looking to find her later and making sure I'm over that 20 gold breakpoint for the economy. So going into Carousel, I'm really looking for a tier. There are 2, which gives me some decent options of being able to get one, and if I can go for either, I'm definitely going to try to go for Rise, because he has a much higher cost. Well, no, not much higher, but he has a higher cost, and it just makes it a little bit easier based on the economy that I'm getting to hit breakpoints while potentially finding something like a Ziggs to bring up my account on Spellweavers up to that magical number 4. So since it's 28 to level and I'm playing Draconic, I definitely want to hit as many power spikes as I can. And I'm not looking to keep Ziggs, because in an ideal world, Ziggs actually leaves the composition later, and instead I'm able to put in... Vel'Koz as an alternate win condition. And then as the game goes later, I'll be replacing my front line with Iron and Volibear, giving me the 2 Revenant trait, as well as being able to make Daisy for an extra front line of survivability. So here I just hold my gold. I can buy the Udyr because it's going to keep me above 10 still. I'm not particularly looking to play Ryze or Jax because, again, Warwick's going to be swapped out with a Volibear. Heimerdinger will replace Udyr, and as I look to go to level 8, I'll look to put in an Ivern, and then as I look to go to level 9, I'll definitely be adding in another unit. I'm not exactly sure what at the moment. It'll probably be something defensive like a Rel. So I was able to get the pop on my 4-cost egg here, and it gives me a number of units that can be very useful for me. I want to stack the corner so that my Zyra lives, and I'm hopeful that I can get another gold. If I can't, I definitely sell the Udyr here. So as I had said before, the first thing I'm looking to do is get my economy up, and what I might end up doing... What I may end up doing is just saving myself some trouble and selling these sets in Udyrs to get to 40 gold. Because, realistically speaking, 3-star set is powerful for lowering the armor of enemies. But since it's a flat armor reduction, not a percent armor reduction, the best it can do is turn off a 2 ironclad trait. And considering my damage is very magic heavy, set's not actually super important in terms of the build. So I could go for the Shadow tier here. It would give me a potentially solid option. But what I'm actually going to end up going for here is a BF sword, because I want to be able to put a Gunblade on Zyra so that if she gets picked and starts getting dove, she's able to heal herself through the consistent cast of her spell. And the Spear of Shojin Ginsu's combo is a personal favorite of mine because as the game goes on, she'll just be restoring mana faster and faster, which will let her continue to cast and chain stun multiple units faster and faster. And I get myself ready here to sell the Udyr in the event that I end up with a loss. And seeing as they have a very early, looks like 4 Legionnaires, 3 Skirmishers, I'll just check to be sure. Yeah, 5 Legionnaires actually, 3 Skirmishers. I definitely want to make sure that I have a plan for if I'm not able to kill that Draven. Thankfully, Draven goes down without a problem, and I can keep going. So from here, I'm not looking to roll for anything. Ziggs is going to be replaced with the Vel'Koz eventually. So I want to make sure that I don't fall behind on leveling, and I start putting more gold into my level up now that I've hit my 50 gold breakpoint. So in regular TFT, you have something called interest. Now that happens that for every 10 gold you have saved up, you get 1 additional gold at the end of round. That's regardless of any sort of a win streak. The easy way to track these gold amounts is through any map that will have an indicator on the side. On this fun pool map, my side has floaty little poros, the opposing side has coconut drinks. And that number will, of course, change with each different opponent that you face. So I'm not looking to 3-star Brand, or else I would buy him out of the shop. But as we go into Carousel here, I'm definitely looking for a power item for Heimerdinger, or power component for Heimerdinger. There's a very slim chance that I'm going to pick up the Heimerdinger here, but if I do, my comp is sitting at a point that I could drop down to 2 Spellweaver with 5 Draconic to get golden eggs, but I really don't think that, especially with him being gone, that is not the time for it. So what I'm going to end up doing here is I'm going to look for probably the strongest items possible, and since there's no super strong items for damage, I'm going to end up getting a tank item. Now my eggs were able to hatch, which is really nice, and I got another few Udyr. The good part about getting those Udyr now is that if I do end up selling him, he still sells for full gold. If it would have been sets, I would have been slightly disappointed. Now I'm going to pre-level here and throw in Rise. That will help me with 2 things. 1, that will give me 3 Forgotten. 2, it will give me an additional unit. That Forgotten is not going to do too much for spell damage, but as a personal precaution, I like to keep myself above 30 gold when going for something like a level, because I find that without going above the 30 gold breakpoint, you really start to fall behind on economy. So as we look to go into future rounds, you can clearly start to see a health difference between top 4 and bottom 4. That health gap can close significantly in round 5 with mismanagement. But currently I'm looking to power to level 9 thanks to Dragon Eggs. And the fact that I haven't hit a Heimerdinger or any sort of a power unit yet really leads me to believe that just pushing for level 9 is the right play. So considering I don't have many units to include at the moment, what I'll do is I'll buy the Rise and I'll sell the spare set that I've been getting for gold to keep myself above 40. Looking into stage 5-1 with completed items, we should be able to hit a decent pace for getting up to level 9, and once we get to level 9, we have a little bit of health to play with, maybe a loss or 2 that we can leave for ensuring that we can hit at least a Heimerdinger to keep getting us free units, and potentially another 5 cost for a power spike. So just looking at the numbers on the comp right now, we would be dropping down to 2 Spellweaver if we're able to hit a stronger unit, but we're not. So what we may end up doing is leaving what we have in, and then as we get to level 9, we'll want to swap out the following. Udyr will want to swap out for Heimerdinger. Warwick will want to swap out for Volibear. Ivern will want to go in general. Ziggs will want to swap out for Vel'Koz. And we're going to look for a unit to swap Rise out for, but right now I don't have any off the top of my head. The fact that we hit a spatula here with so few items means that we can go for a redeemed spatula, which can work out well with putting in Rel at level 9. The other option that I can do is I can actually buy Teemo. I'm playing a little dangerously with buying Teemo at the health that I am, But I think it's the right play, considering that once I'm able to find Ivern, I can get invokers to let my units cast even faster. So that Kale's about to ascend. Once she does, I'm pretty sure I just lose this game. Or sorry, lose this round. Because she's itemized in such a way that she'll continue to heal off her attacks, and there's no way that my Zyra could deal enough damage to kill her. So the reason why I swapped the Rise out here is to try to get a little bit more money towards a faster level. Because if I lose this round, I will definitely be looking to level very quickly towards 9. Potentially even next round. The fact that Soraka is fully itemized as a carry is a little bit disconcerting. But thankfully Zyra is getting to a point that she'll be able to provide a good amount of stuns. I don't think it'll be enough, but it was close. So that's one of the better losses we could have taken at that point. So considering we have 36 to level and we have a spare 2-star Ashe, or we have a Rel that we can put in, I think the best course of action here is just to go to level 9, put in the Rel for the Redeemed, and start looking for my units that I can transition to. I don't think Udyr's providing enough support as a frontline now, so I take the items off him and I end up putting them onto Rel temporarily. As we move into Carousel, we see another Volibear. If we're able to pick that up, that could mean a 2-star Volibear, considering we have level 9. But the other thing that we could pick up is Ivern. Now, the reason why I'm going to go for Ivern over Volibear here is we actually found a Volibear already off of our rolls. And the fact that we have Volibear and Ivern means we're going to get our Revenant buff online right away. And what I'm going to look to do is I'm going to look to drop down to 2 Spellweavers. I want to throw the Thieves' Gloves on... Oh, right. What am I doing? I want to save this Redeemed for when we end up getting a Heimerdinger. I believe that that's the play. What we will end up doing is we'll end up swapping Kale out for a Kindred. If we're able. Unfortunately, it looks like we may be almost out of the game here. So I don't really want this Kale. What I would much rather do is I would much rather have a Kindred, which would be able to keep my Zyra alive for a lot longer, while also having the Redeemed trait. Unfortunately, I do think this is going to end up being loss on the round because of the 3-star Vayne, and only having a 1-star Vel, which should knock me out, but I'll take being at 3 health. Unfortunately, I can't buy the Teemo, even if I want to. I'll find another one. But I'll be able to still make the most of it between having a Zephyr that I can move around and also having a good amount of defensive frontline units. So from here, I put all my cards on the table and just look to roll everything down, hoping that I end up hitting a matching 5 cost, which I don't, but I should still have a little bit of extra gold that I can use. Perfect. So at least I hit the 4 cost, but I don't think it's going to be enough. I've noticed that people have started to stack carries on that side of the map, so I aim to try to put a Zephyr down there, but unfortunately I miss. And it means that I may not be able to get a win off on the map. I did buy myself a lot of time with the Volibear being Zephyred, but Karma's going to be coming online in a second, and I'm not sure that Vel'Koz has the damage to be able to kill her. Alright, well, it looks like Vel'Koz was able to come through. Thankfully, spending everything to roll him to 2 stars was the correct play there, and it's a top 4, making the most out of the dire situation of not being able to find my units. So what I'm going to do here, considering that Ashe is not actually one of my carries, and the 5 costs can be a win condition, is that I'm going to start selling off the spare units that I don't hit, and transitioning into 2-star 5 costs. Now, I throw this Gunblade on Vel'Koz because Gunblade with a Vel'Koz can self-sustain through most of a match, and I throw the bow on Kindred because I want to make sure that she can potentially get her ultimate off in time. Now, this Zephyr hits the Diana, where even though she has a Quicksilver, Zephyr was changed with the Set 5 expansion that it now works through Quicksilver, and this really, really helps us here. I still think we lose because Legionaire is a little bit overtuned and Mordekaiser is very strong, but I'm very glad that we were able to hit a top 4 game. So I'll be right back with a quick bathroom break, and then we're going to be moving into game number 3. Alright, welcome back everybody. Thank you for staying with me, and I'm glad we were able to have some fun tonight. It's been a very interesting last couple of games, and it's looking like it's going to probably continue that way. First things first, let's claim those free star shards on the pass. And thinking back to what was requested from AlphaGen, I want to make sure that I can put on the Chonk. Yep, so I have a 3-star Atlantean Chonk equipped and ready to play. So as we load into the game, one of the first things I'm thinking to myself is that I need to make sure that I do a little bit more scouting, because lately I've been trying to focus too much on where I need to go on my build and not enough on what the opponents are building to see what I need as a splash trait. So I may start doing that a little bit more as the game progresses. And I'm very thankful that they sped up the speed of these early rounds as well as the auto draft units into play to make it so in these first couple of rounds I have no problems. Now, there was a Reddit thread when the season was about to launch that was very interesting and discussed which units can solo all of stage 1. Now, they came up with the results of only 2 specific units, and the units that ended up happening... Boom boom clap as requested. So the units that are able to solo this whole stage 1 end up being a Warwick without any items, an Udyr with defensive items, and a Poppy with defensive items. Those are the only 3 units, but it's surprising that there are 3 units that can end up soloing this early game. So I buy the pair of Ziggs here because I don't really have any good items for Vayne. And it's unfortunate that the game's going to give me a 2-star Gragas because going Brawlers is a possibility seeing that I already have 3. So what I'm going to end up doing is selling the Gragas that I had to be able to throw in another one for the Brawler trait. But what I am going to do is I'm going to throw a Giant's Belt on him because in the event that I get another Gragas, I can definitely try to make a Warmogs or a defensive item on him as a primary tank. So seeing that I got a 2-star Ziggs here makes me very, very happy because I'm going to be playing this 2-star Ziggs throughout the beginning to middle of the game. I haven't been picking up the Lissandras and Vladimirs, but I could go for a Coven game here. I just don't think I have the items to do it, but it's not going to kill my economy to buy both Vladimir and Lissandra in the meantime. As we look to go into the armory on 2-2, I'm thinking to myself, alright, I've got a fast Nunu. It's possible I could go Abominations with Brawlers on the front line to buy myself time. It's possible I could go some sort of a Hellions build if I start seeing more of those. It's not too late. Or I could go Coven Renewer. In any of those builds, I do think the Giant's Belt is the correct play, as I can make a fast Warmogs. which will give me a lot of frontline durability and survivability. The reason why I keep the Yasuo here is because I want to make sure that if I do end up running these Coven, I have a second Nightbringer unit that I can throw in. Or potentially even a fourth Nightbringer unit as the game progresses, because Morgana does happen to be Coven and Nightbringer and a Mystic. But in the immediate, I would want to make sure that if I do throw these in as a level 4 play, that I would have the other Nightbringer to bring in. I don't think I can win this fight because everyone's targeting Leona, and she's wearing a Shadow Gargoyles, and what that ends up doing is it actually lets her heal for every unit targeting her, where regular Gargoyles would give additional resistances. So now that I was blocked off from that, the options that I have to go are some sort of a Legionnaire build, with which I'm going to throw in Riven for 2 Dawnbringer because that makes Gragas into such a strong tank. I could also go for the Hellions, but I'm not really seeing enough of them to feel confident on it. Usually, by the time you go into Carousel, you'd want to have at least the 3 Hellion trait. And this person who I'm versing right here has hard committed to Hellions, or at least a build that really wants attack speed. The reason why I say they've made a hard commit is they've decided that they're going to do a static Stiletto, which is the Shadow Static Shiv, as well as another tier on Ziggs. This build is known as Pikachu Ziggs, affectionately referred by the community, because Ziggs is going to throw every other auto attack, he's going to be letting out those electric bolts. So the reason why I didn't want to sell those Coven here is because of the chance of finding a Morgana like this. In the event that I do get to pick up that Morgana, that will let me go the Coven Nightbringers. I just don't know if it's worth it because as I'm currently sitting, I could also play Mordekaiser to a high degree of effectiveness. The reason why I say that I could play Mordekaiser well here is because I already have a Warmogs, which is one of his best items because his shields are based off his health, his percent of his maximum health. And since Warmogs just provides 1,000 bonus health, you're going to have a very strong time. And the fact that I also have 2 early Legionnaires lets me be able to push higher for the build. I think what I'm going to do here is I'm going to get rid of the Coven Nightbringer Dream. But what I will do is I will buy the Poppy and both of the Kha'Zix. The reason why I'm going to buy those Kha'Zix is that will give me 3 Dawnbringer, actually 4 with the Nidalee, that I could potentially put in as early as next round. I just didn't think that 4 Dawnbringers without any other trait would be as powerful as having a 2-star backline in the Ziggs. I may be mistaken, and I may be proved mistaken very quickly here. But as you can see, a 1-star Gragas is surviving for a very long time, even against Vayne that's dealing consistent true damage, because he just has a flat damage reduction on his ability, or rather a percent damage reduction on his ability. So what I'm going to do here is stay above 10 gold, because that will keep me at a similar economy level throughout the game, but I want to start getting a little bit more powerful. What I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to end up going for the 4 Dawnbringers, with the difference that I'm going to keep the Brawler in, because I want to make sure that Gragas can be as tanky as possible, even still at 1 star. The fact that I hit the Soraka here makes me a little bit more confident about throwing her in as a Dawnbringer, and I really don't think that going Poppy or Hellions is going to be the right play with finding so few units. Now, what's stopping me from going towards some sort of a Dawnbringer build is that Karma would be your main carry, and Karma functions very, very uniquely in that every time she casts her spell, the damage cost gets the mana cost gets reduced. Now, The reason why this is so powerful is once you put blue buff on Karma, she starts by casting faster, and over time, she becomes able to instantly cast. So what I may end up doing here, depending on if I can get a tier or two, is I could go for the Karma, and the ability power helps me towards that, but it's not looking very likely right now. It's actually looking quite likely for Mordekaiser, because I have near perfect items for him. What I'll do in the meantime, though, is I will end up buying the Kazakhs, and I will end up just running the Dawnbringers, but knowing and keeping in the back of my mind that I will end up going Legionnaires as the game progresses. So with that in mind, what I can actually do is I can start getting my Mordekaiser items ready, and then I can make a Caustic Quicksilver on the Nidalee, and I can put a spare Needlessly Large Rod on Gragas, both making him a little bit more durable, but mainly setting up that I can use Gragas as an item holder until I get Mordekaiser. From here, and now that I have a game plan, I feel much more confident selling any spare units that I have, which would be all of these different ones over here, the Nunu and the Soraka. What I'm waiting for right now is if I'm going to win the round or not. It's not looking likely, especially considering he has two 2-star Warwicks in. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to sell both of these Soraka to break 30 gold. So if I were looking for ideal items here, I would want something like a sword. Since I don't have that, I'm going to look for the next best item, which would be something like a chain vest to be able... Actually, it would be something like a bow, to be able to empower another Legionnaire in the backline, ideally Draven or Kale, as a secondary carry with rapid fire cannon. Being at 39 gold here is a little bit awkward, but overall I'm not complaining because I know that if I win, I get to 40. If I lose, no matter how sad it is to not let Gragas become an even stronger tank, I think I end up selling this spare Gragas, knowing that I'm going to be looking to make economy and level as fast as possible, while I still have a decent health total. So unfortunately my front line is just stuck on this extremely durable Leona. And I do think I will lose because Redeemed increases ability power, and the ability power gets amplified at the end of round, so they are going to become extremely damage heavy. So now that I'm sitting at 50 gold here, I just wait. And beyond this, my spare gold is going to go into leveling for the next little while. At 6, I've kept this Yasuo through all this time while still maintaining my economy so that I can put in a second Legionnaire. Albeit Riven and Yasuo not being the strongest of the Legionnaire group. And unfortunate that I wasn't able to find Aatrox or Callista. If I find a single one of either of those along my way, I'll make sure to pick one up, just for trait bonuses. But it's looking like I should be able to hit a 4 Legionnaire board, and now I have to start thinking about what I want to put in as additional units. The first thing that comes to mind is that I might want to go Dragon Slayers. And the reason for that is because they get additional ability power provided to the entire team once you have killed a unit with more than, I believe, 1700 max HP. So going into this, I'm looking for a sword, but not a shadow sword, which means that I'm going to start looking for items for a secondary carry. Ideally something like Kale. That would mean that I'm probably looking to grab this bow on Brand. Because that means on top of having a rapid fire cannon, I will have a spare bow that I can use for something else. Because I don't need to put a a Rage Blade onto Mordekaiser, I can, worst case, use a Jeweled Gauntlet. So Yasuo goes in, and the first thing I'm going to do is look at what Legionnaires I'm going to run in my endgame comp. So I know I want to run Mordekaiser, he's going to be a frontline carry. I know I want to run Kale, she's going to be a backline carry. I know I want to run potentially a Draven. So at this point I don't actually know what other ones I'd want to run. I could run a Draven, give myself some attack damage threat, but I think the first thing I want to do is make sure I use my items effectively, and I give Yasuo all these attack speed items. Now my positioning for Yasuo here was very poor in that I left him in the front line after giving him a rapid fire cannon so that he would have increased range. What I should have done was moved him back to the second row behind my front line because his attack range gets increased by 1 with rapid fire, and he would have been able to do a much better job of staying alive at the start and potentially start stacking up his attack speed and attack damage and true damage he gets off his ability. So I did a single roll there to see if I could hit the Gragas because that would very much power up my composition as it stands. I wasn't able to hit it, so I just keep riding out the comp as it is, hoping that I will be able to hit a decently paced Mordekaiser, Legionnaires. So hitting the Draven is a pretty nice win for us. Being able to have him on the bench as a third Legionnaire for when we hit Mordekaiser for a fourth will be very powerful. Unfortunately, not hitting either of Aatrox or Callista is going to be a large problem as we move into the late game. And thank you, streamer logic. I was able to hit both, which meant that I very, very quickly put myself up to 6 Legionnaires. What I can do with this is I can start getting Mordekaiser ready as my ultimate carry in the build. And with that, I can make it so he has a little bit of support on the front line, definite support in the back line, and I believe the correct play is to wait until 4-2 before I commit this Sparring Glove, in the event that I could land a sword and give him a Gunblade that would make him near unkillable. The other thing I can do right now is I can buy both of those Dragon Slayers, because if I do end up just staying at 6 Legionnaire, then I can end up adding in the Dragon Slayer and someone else. But ideally what I hope to do is I hope to put in Diana as my other Dragon Slayer, and then I can splash additional traits as needed. So now that I've hit level 7, I'm feeling a little bit weak, but I want to make sure that I throw in Pantheon for a second Dragon Slayer in the immediate. So the reason why I did all that rolling there, if only to leave myself at 40 gold, is because I don't believe I'm going to go to 8 Dawnbringer, and as such, or sorry, 8 Dawnbringer, 8 Legionnaire, and as such, I want to make sure that my build is as strong as possible so I lose as little health as possible. Unfortunately, I managed to hit this Leona player right as he peaked. So it's definitely a loss because I can't kill that. So the fact that I hit a 1% volley bear really makes me feel strongly that I should be putting it in as an inclusion. And as you can see, I'm stacking items on Callista here. The main reason for that is because I will be taking her out for Kale as soon as I'm able. If I would have hit a 1% Kale there, it would have been a very different story. I would have been very elated, and it would have given me enough comfort that I would be much happier moving into level 8 territory. But unfortunately, as the composition stands right now, I just have 1-cost units. Sorry, 1-cost, 1-star units, and I'm about to die. So the only way that I'll be able to make it out of this is a miracle. Unfortunately, there was no spatula there, or else I would have been able to make a Legionaire spat off of this Callista spare bow. So what I end up doing here is I just end up making a Ginsu's Rageblade. Considering I'm so low health, I have no choice but to level up to 8, put in the Pantheon, and do a roll to see if I can hit anything. Thankfully, I'm able to roll through, find a Kale, and put myself in a much stronger position going into the round, but not as strong as I would like to be. This Giant's Belt is going to go on Pantheon, because with his damage reduction, he's going to act as the best frontliner that I have. Unfortunately, this is looking like just an 8th place. I wish I could have done more, but okay, Mordekaiser says, not this time. So thankfully I was able to get a bit more of a chance to have my units being put in. The number 1 unit that I would like to see as a potential inclusion wouldn't be a Volibear. I think it would actually have to be something like another Verdant, like a Taric. Unfortunately, I don't really have the ability to get much more out of my units here. I'm fine leaving Aatrox at 1 stars, but what I really need to see are more Mordekaisers. So as it stands, it's Kale and Mort against the world. I don't think Mordekaiser has enough damage this time, but it's possible that Kale has ascended enough that she can make it. So right now I'm holding on by the skin of my teeth, but thankfully I am still holding on. I'm not actually sure what the play would be here. Realistically speaking, there's no right answer. I think what I would do over Volibear would be Rel, to give 1, Redeemed, and 2, the ability for shielding and stuns as the game progresses. Still, having a 1-star Mordekaiser at this stage in the game is pretty much death, unfortunately. I do think Volibear's knockup is more impactful, or else I would have gone for something like the Garen. The two upgrades I'm looking to make, just for the record, are to swap Pantheon out for a Diana to try to have a bit more backline access and to buy a bit more time for Kayle through CCing their carries. Nope. As well as being able to hit a Rel and a Mordekaiser 2-star. Unfortunately, the 1-star Kayle made the difference in the loss there, but as you can see, even at 1 stars, the 6 Legionnaires are very strong. So as I'm starting to get desperate for my rolls here, I end up selling most of my units to try to make a Hail Mary play, and that Hail Mary play did not end up the way I was hoping that it would. Unfortunately, there are many Aphelios in the lobby, which naturally make me struggle, especially considering the mix of a Bloodthirster plus any form of a Ginsu's. And I wasn't able to hit the 2-star Mord or the 2-star Kayle, so that's looking like an 8th. And that's okay. These things happen when it comes to the games, especially when I wanted to go Legionnaires, did not hit any early Legionnaires. On my transition, I was able to hit some 1-star Legionnaires, but it didn't end up working out in the end because I didn't hit any other Mordekaisers. And that's okay. Bit of a hard hit to the LP, but nothing that is unmanageable. I'm going to go in for one more for the night. Did we like the Chonk? I think we liked the Chonk. Chonk seems like a fan favorite. I'll stick with it for the night. Well, this is going to be one of the most fun games of the night. We're in for a treat. We managed to get an all spatula start. This game's going to be crazy. So we've already hit Legionaire Spat, which is the most powerful spatula in the game as of this patch. So if I'm able to run Legionnaires as I hit both of these, it's potentially just going to be an 8 Legionnaire game, because with that you get the 2 Dragon Slayer with Mordekaiser, and that's strong enough when you throw the spare spatula on Diana. The only thing that I would make sure to do as a difference is try to hit 2 stars of these Legionnaires early if possible. And the game is giving me A little bit of a sign that I'm on the right path here by giving me an extra ribbon to give me a third Legionnaire that I will very quickly bump up to 4 Legionnaires. So as far as Legionnaires go, they only heal after casting an ability, so Kled does not make a very good Legionnaire. Although the attack speed is nice, it's not exactly what he's looking for. So what I'm going to do here is, since I didn't get gold, I buy the Vlad, because a 2-star Vlad is good enough at the start. And I suddenly end up hitting a 2-star Aatrox instead, which is great. As far as it goes for who would make the best Legionnaire in the early game, I would say that it ends up being our 3-cost unit of a Riven, of an Ash. So I put the Legionnaire emblem on, do a fast level because this is going to be a faster leveled composition, and I commit. I go all in with my items, making sure that I can start working towards getting Legionnaires. From here, all I'm really focusing on is trying to get some good Mordekaiser items. And you might be asking what makes good Mordekaiser items. Ideally, you just want some sort of resistances and potentially a way to heal. But first and foremost, resistances are key. Having 4 Legionnaire this early in the game, even with only having 1 star on most of them, should put me in a very strong position to get my gold up to 50 and start doing some faster leveling towards level 8. This Shadow Vest will make a Refracted Bramble, which will give 200 armor, and I think that's the play. Yeah, it'll be 200 armor with components, which will work to make one of the most durable frontliners on whoever I end up giving that to. I wanted to get some general feedback from my viewers, and thank you again for tuning into the stream tonight. I wanted to see, would it actually be beneficial on the stream if I added any sort of a tool that said the games that I've been playing for the night and what scores I've gone and which composition? Maybe a little, like, clear table somewhere in the top left or top right? And then looking through the videos when I post them on YouTube as VODs, you'd be able to look back and see which compositions were run at a glance? Or is that too spoilery for skipping ahead in the video and then seeing what happens? Or is that not anything valuable? Let me know. Unfortunately, I don't know how to start polls or anything in the chat, or else I would definitely just throw up a quick poll. All right, that sounds like a great idea. Thanks, Alphagen. So this person had a similar idea as me, where they already also put down the Legionnaire spatula. Where the unfortunate part for me is that because they have the Ka, they were able to hit the 2 Dawnbringer, which gives that extra healing, and the fact that he's a 2-star Ka makes him much stronger. If I could, right now I would throw the Ash out and put the Nidalee in, but I don't really want to drop below the gold, and I'm sure I'll find another unit to add in over time. So especially considering the possibility that there may be multiple Legionnaires in this game, I'm very glad I had the double armor, But at the same time, I want to make sure that I grab this Shadow MR if I need to make a Shadow Quicksilver, because that would definitely play best if other people's compositions using Spatula become very CC heavy, potentially running Draconics, potentially running Coven. Potentially even running Abomination. Not that it's super likely with how I've seen the lobby going tonight. So because this person ended up leveling to 5 sooner, they don't have any downside for the composition. They ended up coming out with a win there. It could have been worth it to level up to 5, but I didn't feel like I had anything strong enough to include. I think that might have been a mistake. Just making sure that I would have had the extra unit could have made the difference there. What I can do is I can use Leona as a stopgap to start building items for Mordekaiser, considering that she's a very tanky one-cost unit. And what I'm hoping to do here is I'm hoping to get a win, and with that win I'll be able to buy the second Leona, try to have a very defensive frontliner as I look to work on the build. Unfortunately, this is looking like it will probably be a loss, because I wasn't able to kill the Poppy. So I'm going to swap the Kha'Zix out, because I can replace him with any unit later. And luckily for me, I was able to hit 2 more to make a 2-star anyway. From here, some of the best advice I can give, especially when you're in a loss streak, you want to make sure that if possible, you can try to continue to lose, but do it with as minimal loss as possible. And what I mean by that is if you can lose by 1 to 2 units, keeping your health total as high as possible, you can actually continue getting gold from a loss streak as well, and it can end up being just as impactful as win streaking through all of Stage 3, for example. So I believe having the 2-star Leona should make my frontline durable enough that I should not be dying very quickly. But considering this person ended up making a Dawnbringer Spatula on Nocturne, I very much believe that he's going to sell that later. Or he's going to look to go 6 Dawnbringer plus 3 Revenant. But more realistically, I believe that he'll be selling that later. Oh, I think I win this. It's going to be close, but yeah, unfortunate. I would have rather taken the loss there. So for what I'm hoping to go, if I'm going to go for a Mordekaiser build, neither of these are ideal as far as carry items can go, but what I can do to try to salvage this is I can take a BF sword, and what that means I can do is if I make Mordekaiser a frontliner and I do go 8 Legionnaires, I could actually make a Aphelios, the 8th Legionnaire in the back line, and put the Legionnaire spat on him along with a Risk Thirster, and make him have extremely high attack speed and very solid durability through the healing. Now, because I got rid of my loss streak, I'm not looking forward to this round. Because it's possible that I may end up winning. Or sorry, possible that I may end up losing. And quite likely, actually, looking at the fact that he's got Hellions along with a Nautilus and a Frozen Heart. And because Leona doesn't have anything like a Sunfire, she's not dealing any sort of persistent damage, so I'm going to continue to lose. I really wish that Gragas would have been able to get off one more auto and been able to finish off my Callista, because I would have been able to have that 5 loss. But we play with what we have, not with what we want. So we continue on, hoping that next round I can start to econ and work my way up towards a faster level 8. As we look to go into this carousel, I want to try to get a potential durability item for Mordekaiser. But I don't want to put a Shadow Warmogs on Mord, because then he starts to lose health every second. So what I can do is I can take this ability power and I can potentially make it into something like a Jeweled Gauntlet later. Without having anything proactive to be able to include in my build, I wanted to just throw in LeBlanc to try to get a second assassin. Just something to splash for now. So for now, we just play tough metal, hold our money, and look towards leveling, because we know that we will need to do a harder roll down at level 7 or level 8 in order to hit a few more Legionnaires for keeping ourselves in the game consistently. Now, unfortunately, this person was able to get the Legionnaire Spat as well as hit an early Mordekaiser. So it's not looking good for the boys in the corner. Or for your boy in the corner. That, however, is a bit of a windfall. Because what I'll end up doing here is I'll end up going with my plan of throwing the damage items onto Aphelios. And if I'm able to turn this ability power into a Ginsu's, I have myself a very solid backup carry. So I do have an extra Dragon Slayer that I can throw in, but unfortunately I'm feeling a little bit weak. In order for me to get to 6 Legionnaire, I would need to find a Yasuo or Mordekaiser, both of which would be very valuable. In the meantime, I want to make sure that I don't lose track of my tank items, and I throw them on a unit so that it will be able to protect me better. When it comes down to it between these two Aphelios, he wins every time because he's got the Ginsus. But only losing by 1 unit is definitely not the end of the world here. So I managed to hit the bow, which works out very well for me as I'm able to go for a Ginsu's Rageblade on Aphelios. The only consideration that I have now is if I'm not hitting Mordekaiser, it may be possible to just lower my Legionnaire count and transition to a Nightbringer Aphelios build. Because I do already have the Diana, I have another Ranger in Varus, and I can get Morgana in for a 3rd Nightbringer as well as a Mystic that I can use later. So I'm currently just trying to think on if it's worth it to put in Aphelios, and if I do, what I'm going to end up doing with this Legionnaire spat. And I do think that it's correct play. And what I can end up doing is, along with the Nightbringers, I can end up going 4 Nightbringers and splashing Dragon Slayer. Which, considering how contested Legionnaires have been looking, it might actually just be the correct play. For now, I'll keep a form of Legionnaires in, along with everything else, and not put all my cards on the table just yet, because as I just hit, it's possible that I may not need to do that in the end. Unfortunately, my team is looking very, very weak at the moment. The only way that I can comfortably fix this or make this work better would be for me to be able to get to level 8 and be able to put in either a 4th Nightbringer, or would be to be able to put in a 4th Nightbringer and include Mordekaiser. And that would be a decent holdover until I get to 8 Legionnaires. Unfortunately, once again, my health is getting far too low for me to be able to look to those dreams. So what I'm going to have to do is a little bit more of an aggressive level strategy, lose my economy, and try to be able to hold out off of what I'm able to find. Man, that Silverwing loves their emotes. Let's give him back one of our own. So what we have to do here is we have to look to level. Thankfully, we're able to find the Kindred, which does give us another Mystic for when we throw in our Nightbringers. What we'll do here is we'll look to drop to 4 Legionnaires while keeping our... Force of Habit. Drop to 4 Nightbringers while we throw in our Legionnaires and our splashed units. And our comp will end up being where we upgrade our Nightbringers, specifically where we end up putting in a Darius, and try to use the sheer attack speed of Aphelios to be able to pull out a win. If I could, I would love to throw in this Rel. Unfortunately, I don't think I'll be able to get that chance. The one unit I could have taken out for it is Pantheon. You know, as funny as it sounds, I do think he wins this. Because he's a 2-star Aphelios with Ginsu's and Bloodthirster. So thankfully we hit the 2-star Diana. And looking at the comp logically, I do think the Rel has to go in over the Pantheon, because if we manage to hit the Mordekaiser, that replaces Ribbon, and that will give us our Dragon Soul anyway. And as well, what we can do is we can look to make a Quicksilver on one of our backline carries, potentially Kindred, so that she doesn't get stopped when trying to apply her Lamb's Respite. So don't really hit any upgrades there. But fortunately for us, that Kindred was able to get her ult off the first time. But unfortunately for us, this person has an actually proper Aphelios build, which leaves us pretty much dead to rights. See, the hard part, especially considering there's going to be a micro patch tomorrow morning, also known as tonight at about 3 in the morning, is that they know that Mordekaiser is extremely overtuned. There was a bit of a gamble there to see if I could hit a 2-star Aphelios or a 2-star Kindred by selling off the higher starred unit that I had. But looking at the changes that are going to be coming out on the B patch tomorrow, there's going to be a nerf to Legionaires at 6 and 8, Revenants revive by a drastic amount at both ranks, reduction in Ziggs attack speed because they don't like the Pikachu Ziggs interaction. Nerfs to Kennen, LeBlanc, Aphelios, Ivern, Mordekaiser, and Volibear. So basically, Revenants, Legionnaires, Aphelios, and a couple of overperforming Hellion units. So finishing the night off with that 7th is going to leave me once again at 0. I don't believe it'll demote me into gold. And it's looking like tomorrow is going to be another day for us to start climbing once again. With that, I'm going to end the stream here. So thank you everybody for watching, and have a great night.